I think before we start, I'll just, I think I'm really glad the AFL has got on the front foot and is doing something around the domestic violence issue that we have in our community. I think coming together and making people have an awareness of this and encouraging people to try and stamp it out, to talk about it, to make it a part of the public narrative that this isn't okay. It's certainly something that I will keep pushing at our football club, that we need to continue to call out anything to do with domestic violence. And I think as an organisation, the AFL has a lot of power and they can put things into the public narrative. And this is one that I think if we talk about it a bit more as a society, then it's something we can look to stamp out, because it's unacceptable, and we let far too much happen. They're horrible stories, and it'd be great if the AFL can be a leading light in stamping it out.
So I guess it looked pretty dicey in the first 5 minutes, but you really seemed to turn it your way in pretty impressive fashion after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think our first quarters have been consistently, we've been not going particularly well. So we're looking for solutions for the early part of games. And, in some of our games, we've actually been quite strong in the early part of the first quarter, but then we fade late. Today, a little bit the opposite, which I was really proud of the boys. And Connor Nash in particular. So it was about the 5 or 6 minute mark. We hadn't touched the ball, 3 goals down, and he, there's sort of that first rotations coming around, and he was on the bench at the start of the game, and he takes the other 3 boys out, and he says, "We need to change this game. We're in control here. We need to change the narrative of what's happening." And I think when you've got players who are willing to make a change in a game, that's what we really need. And we've been working enormously hard on that. And today, there was some reward for effort. I thought we handled some momentum swings well today, which we've been a bit hit and miss with it, if I'm honest. So I think the players handled the momentum of today's game, including the first 5 minutes, fantastically well, and that's what gave us a chance to be in the game and get the victory at the end.
In the context of you get a belting from the top side last week, you look in a lot of trouble early. How big was today's win? And they headed you in the last quarter as well, like a ton of character on Sam.
Yeah, I think that the character that the boys showed was fantastic. I think their belief and commitment in what we had done through the week, through the month, through the year, through the years. I think you're always looking for evidence that you're on the right track, and I think today you see there's a lot of things we've been working on. We've been working on momentum a lot, trying to handle it, trying to not concede runs of goals, trying to handle structural changes, etc. And we handled most of those really well today. I thought Blake Hardwick's performance was first class, and we started forward. We had to move him back. And when Sis came off, he had to play as a back, then he had to play as a spare back, and he just did whatever was needed throughout the day. And I thought his leadership, was. I'm sure I'm going to get questions about Sis and how good he was, and rightly so. But I think there's a couple of other players as well that deserve some credit, and Blake would be one of those.
We'll get to those other players in time, but Sis, you mentioned you brought him up, but dislocated shoulder and I think an ankle as well in the third quarter. It, stood really tall, kicked pretty much the match-winning goal, and played both ends of the ground. How do you sort of sum up his performance today?
Yeah, I mean, he's been under a lot of pressure. He's still a young man and new in his leadership journey, and he's obviously gets a fair bit of attention from the opposition. And so he pops his shoulder. He said, "Oh no, it went back in pretty well. I think I'm okay." I said, "Oh, okay." So you leave him out there, and then he hurt his ankle in the third, and at 3/4 time, we'd already made a sub. I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, I just might not be able to do a couple of things. So maybe, I can keep playing, but I don't want to cost us. What about forward? I could swap with Hardwick, with Dimmer." So I basically got them together and said, "What do you guys think?" And then they said, "Yeah, all right, let's do that." So they really drove their own. And then, for Blake to go into the back half and do what he needed to do, and then for James to go into the front half and do what he needed to do, I thought their level of trust in each other to play each other's roles, I thought was fantastic. And for James to get he's calling it the match winner. So for James to get that, I think, it would have been really easy for him not to keep playing. He's got shoulder sore, foot sore. I think no one would have said, "Oh, I completely understand that." But his level of commitment to work through that and to lead the way for our other boys was first class.
Is he in any doubt for next week, do you reckon?
I haven't. I have absolutely no idea. Yeah, haven't spoken to anyone about that. I hope not.
Yeah.
the handball to Nick Watson could have put a damper on his performance to 15 metres out.
15's generous. I think it's a bit closer than that. But I think, I mean, if you watch Nick Watson, the thing that you guys will see is the easy miss. But the thing that I saw was he was in a 2-on-1. We'd put number behind the ball, they equalised it. We put another one, they equalised it. So basically he was in the forward line almost by himself. And there's a fantastic piece of footage. It's right on the far wing, left-hand end. And he jumps up and spoils it, and he's not, really built for that, but he jumps up and spoils it, then he chases and gets a rundown tackle, and we end up winning the ball and going forward. And so in his mind, he said, felt like I cost us the game, but in my mind, he cost us an opportunity and he created an opportunity, and the resilience that he had as a very young player, hasn't played for a long period, comes on as a sub. You think about the mental anguish that causes in a 19-year-old athlete. The fact he was able to get back up off the canvas after an embarrassing error for the kid, and then do something that the team absolutely values, and gave us another opportunity to score. I mean, without his resilience, I don't think we win that game. So even though he'll be getting a bit of a ribbing in the locker room right now, I'm sure, but I was enormously proud of his follow-up after it.
You're the family club. Mum gets back apparently from a holiday in London in time to see her son
Kelsha
kick 2 goals. How special is that? He plays in a pretty big upset win. It's not a bad debut for the boy.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Kelsha, early in the week, it was like, is he a chance to play? And we hadn't made a decision yet. We sort of said, not sure. And he said, some of his family's overseas, so do you think you could know soon? So we made the decision a little bit earlier than we might have, and they were able to get here and to see him. But I mean, he did exactly what we thought, and I'm sure you'll look at the 2 goals and a couple of good marks. But I mean, he had 4 tackles as a 6'4" key forward, and I think his ability to get after the opposition when the ball hit the ground is a big part of why we played him in this game. We knew that the aerial threat would be a challenge against the Bulldogs, and so even if he couldn't mark it, his desire to put pressure on we knew would be important, and when you get 4 tackles out of a key forward, you take that. Obviously the goals are great, and they'll be what everyone remembers and talks about, and rightly so, but for us we value the small things just as highly.
Impey's performance seemed to be really instrumental in the winter as well.
Jarman's been amazingly consistent. I don't think anyone cares more about their teammates, about how they play, about how they, what the influence they can have on others. I think if you speak to any of our players about the guys they love playing footy with or that help them play better, Jarman will be close to the first name that they say. And I think about the players who I coach, who I can rely on, that will leave unconditional effort every week. Probably him at one end of the ground and Dylan Moore at the other are the 2 guys who will leave everything out there, and if they make a mistake, they'll follow it up and they'll try again. And I think the other players all walk taller for those guys being around them. And I think Jarman, sometimes he plays fantastically well without the offensive threat. And tonight he got the offensive threat, but he plays in a way that we love the way he goes about it. We love his defensive pressure. He runs just as fast in defence as offence, and his work ethic and work rate to do the little things that we value is enormous. And he really leads our back line. I think there's bigger names than him behind the ball. The Sicily, or even someone like Josh Weddle that everyone talks about and does the flash. But when you see Jarman doing what he does behind the ball, I think he's one of those players that other coaches would like watching him because they can see what we value.
I guess, speaking of Weddle, I think him and Frost stood up pretty tall on 2 of their biggest threats up for, was it in Norton and Ugle-Hagan? They must have been pretty proud of their efforts today as well.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously a bit undersized behind the ball. I thought he had seven 1%ers, so I think they're mostly all spoils, where he normally is the guy who would love to come off and take an intercept mark, but he's really disciplined today and did the simple things well. He was able to spoil and get the ball to ground a lot. They had a lot of threat in the air, obviously, and to keep all of their key, none of them kicked more than 2. So I think that was a big step forward. We played them in the pre-season. We had real trouble with their tall. So I think Frosty, Sis, and I thought Jack Scrimshaw, he was fantastic today. He had, at half-time, I couldn't believe he'd only had 6 or 8 possessions, but they were almost all intercept possessions. And I think the way that he played and the way that he came forward on the ball and was able to create turnovers for us was absolutely vital for us today.
Any other injury concerns from today, other than Sifs? Or?
I don't think so. No, I haven't had an injury update just yet, so I think we'll. We've obviously got a shorter break, travel, so the boys will be recovering now, and we'll get ready for the Saints on Saturday down in Tassie.
When you might get back for the Saints game, how's Wingard tracking and sort of thing?
I actually brought up Wingard with the medical team this week when we had a couple of guys go out, and they said no, he's still got a couple of weeks away. So, I mean, he's not. The medical team sort of says he's not really available for AFL selection for another couple of weeks, but he got through the game today, I believe, and was able to have an influence at Box Hill. So he's been fantastic around the group, and I think everyone loves seeing Chad back up and about and out there playing.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.